You're listening to Wise Women with Daisy Khan, where faith rolls up its sleeves as a force for good and where women define the future with wisdom and wonder. I'm Daisy Khan, author, speaker, and a Muslim woman who spent her life wrestling with a messy, miraculous collision of faith and real life. And kindly subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Welcome to Wise Women with Daisy Khan. I'm so glad you're here for this special podcast that we did on the spur of the moment. Today we're going to mark the birth of the most influential man in the history of mankind, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. But let's first discuss why Prophet Muhammad is considered the most influential man in history. Because in just 23 years, he changed the hearts and minds of a deeply divided society. And he laid the foundation for a civilization that would change the world. And yes, that's what I'm saying. He was a spiritual guide because he was a prophet and a messenger, but he was a teacher. He was also a statesman. He was a judge, a peacemaker, a family man with 4 daughters, all at once. Even non-Muslim historians recognize this. Michael Hart, in the 100 ranking of the most influential persons in history, ranked Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, at number 1. He said he was the only man in history who was supremely successful in both the religious and the secular levels. As a spiritual master, a teacher and leader, he was called in the Quran that he was sent as a mercy to the worlds. What does this mercy to the worlds actually mean? It doesn't just refer to humanity or Muslims. It includes everybody, all of creation, humans, jinns, animals, and the environment. His message was not only for the Arabs of the time, it was also to the non-Arabs. For believers, he was a source of guidance. For others, the ethical principles that he brought into society benefited everyone in society. And how did he extend this mercy to everyone? He did it through guidance. He led his people out of spiritual darkness into the light of faith. Purpose. He created moral clarity for people, where he established the rights for the oppressed, particularly for women, the orphans, and the poor, transforming the social fabric of Arabia forever. Before Islam, for instance, baby girls were buried alive, and he condemned the practice so much so that revelation after revelation came down, elevating the status of women. So when he was persecuted himself, he was mocked, driven out of his own land from Mecca, and he had to flee persecution. He never prayed for the destruction of his enemies. When he later returned to Mecca and he conquered the land that he was thrown out of, do you know what he did? He didn't jail them or imprison the people that were his opponents. He offered them general amnesty. I mean, who does that? He said to them, "There is no blame upon you today. May God forgive you." Because God is the most merciful of the merciful. He taught kindness to animals. He warned against overloading beasts of burden like donkeys. People would pile up stuff on donkeys. And he condemned hunting for sports. And this is why Muslims don't hunt to this day. He spoke of the reward of giving water to a thirsty dog. How nice is that? So, today, on the occasion of his birthday, we take a moment to reflect on who he was, what he stood for, and why his example still matters to this day. So, let's just go back a little bit, roll the dice a little bit, and go back to 7th century Arabia. This was a world that was completely torn by tribalism. We're witnessing tribalism today, right? We are seeing a little piece of it, remnants of it. But imagine in those days, tribes were everything. And violence was commonplace. And there was a cycle of revenge. And this is the world that he was born into. But at the tender age of 6, he became an orphan. His father died before he was born, and his mother died when he was 6 years old. He didn't come from wealth or power, although he came from a very established family. So, because he was an orphan, he was always contemplative, quiet, thoughtful, and always connected to nature. And he also knew what it was like to be overlooked, because he always felt for other orphans. And contrary to what you hear in all the rubbish media and all the blogs of Islamophobes, his mission never began with a sword. Do you know how it began? With the word read or recite. This was the first revelation he received at the age of 40, when he was contemplating on how he could change the world. It was a call, a clarion call, to think, to learn, and to seek the truth, and the transformative power of new ideas. And what were those ideas? For the first time, women were granted the right to inherit. These are women who were buried alive. Now they're getting the right to inherit. They could choose their spouses. They could divorce if they wanted to. They could own property. Their dignity became enshrined in divine law. He revolutionized the concept of charity. That charity became institutionalized as one of the 5 pillars of the faith. In a nutshell, Prophet Muhammad didn't just preach this. He actually lived it. For example, he mended his own clothes. He milked his own goats. He visited his neighbors. He played with children and showed kindness to animals, even though he was a messenger and a leader of the community. That humility, it was part of his greatness. But fast forward to the world we live in today. But the Prophet's example gives us some guidance, even now. For example, when we see hate, racism, and Islamophobia, we can remember how he protected the Christian community of Najran and guaranteed their safety and freedom. When we see sexism, let's take a note of how he valued his 4 daughters and how much he honored his wife Khadija, a strong, successful woman who was his biggest supporter. When we see climate degradation, he reminded us that we were stewards of the environment and never to even waste a drop of water, he said. And when we wage wars of self-defense, and we know that we must adhere to the stringent rules of warfare he established that protect civilians, children, elderly, animals from harm, and where destruction of property and water wells and trees is strictly forbidden. When we hear about religious tensions, we can look to his groundbreaking Medina Charter. He brought together his new followers, Muslims, the Jews, Christians, pagans, Sabians, whoever was there, different faiths and communities, and united them as one society. Everyone had rights, but they also had responsibilities. And it was the first written constitution in history, and it showed the world that unity doesn't require uniformity, it just requires justice and respect. And speaking of equality, listen to what he said in his final sermon. This was months before he passed on. All humankind is from Adam and Eve. An Arab has no superiority over a non-Arab, nor does a non-Arab have any superiority over an Arab. A white has no superiority over a black, nor does a black have any superiority over a white, except by piety and good action. These words were said 1,400 plus years ago, and they still speak directly to us today when we struggle with racism, division, and injustice. He didn't just talk about mercy and justice. He actually lived it with everyone, in his home, in his community, and even with those who opposed him. While there is no debate about how much Muslims love the Prophet, how we celebrate the love, specifically the celebration of his birthday, known as Mawlid, is actually a subject of deep controversy within the Muslim world. So the tension is never about love, but about the expression of love. So one group that celebrates the Prophet's birthday, they see Mawlid as something very beautiful, where you're not just marking a day, you are strengthening community bonds, you are deepening your love for the Prophet, and passing on the Prophet's legacy to future generations. And on the other hand, you have another group that sees things very differently. They believe that religion was perfected during the Prophet's time, and introducing anything new, especially in matters of worship, risks changing that. Now, I have my own personal opinion on this, and I think that I need to do a whole podcast on this, because there are many practices that came about after the death of the Prophet, which didn't have a precedent during the time of the Prophet, and were added on because there was good intention behind it. So intention is what determines the action. And maybe that's the real takeaway from here, that Islam is dynamic, it has room for different perspectives, and for even respectful disagreement. And our unity as an ummah doesn't mean we all have to express our love in the exact same way. So, as we come to the conclusion of this episode, I want to say, on this day, what we're really celebrating is a life that redefined humanity itself. We celebrate the ultimate role model, al-insan al-kamil, the perfect human being. That is what the Prophet is called in Arabic. His birthday is a call to action, to try and walk in his footsteps, to be gentle, to be kind, to lead with humility as he did, to build bridges of character that he embodied. And he was and remains a mercy to the world. And that mercy is needed more than ever today. I thank you all for listening. I'm Daisy Khan, your host. Until next time. Thank you for joining me on Wise Women. If something stirred in you today, don't let it stop here. Share this episode with someone who needs it. Reflect on what resonated for you. And definitely plant one seed of change, however small. Remember, you do matter. And your actions have a ripple effect. But none of us can rise alone. To explore more resources and ways to get involved, do visit my website, daisycon.com. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, because every click is your way of amplifying this message to others. Wisdom isn't just heard, my friends, it's lived. So let's live it. Until next time, stay wise and stay rooted.